Det här är en fågel!
Vi förstår innan icke.
Good evening, welcome, and welcome back to the Longhouse, a show about art, culture, politics, philosophy, and especially tonight, history, all with a true right Nordic perspective. I see a lot of activity in chat already. Hello, everyone. And tonight we are going to be doing something that I've been looking forward to, and that is we're going to be diving into the Nordic history. And it's going to be a series that's probably going to be more than one episode, hence why we called it part one. I think it's up to our guests here to figure out how long this might take and how detailed it's going to be as we get into more interesting and eventful times with more probably historical accounts. But first, let me introduce all of the panelists here. Obviously, as always, my co-host Ludwig Path.
Thank you very much, Walrus. Good evening, everyone. I'm glad to be back as usual. So, history is not my forte. It's definitely an interesting subject, but probably going to be a bit more in the background in this episode, just trying to learn and being sort of the resident truck. Maybe ask some stupid questions. That will be, I think that's as much use as I can be tonight.
I agree. I'll have to supplement with some general history knowledge, but that's about it. But that's also why we have two very strong panelists that have been featuring on shows we've done already in the form of Carl. Welcome.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
And also, of course, the one who's been doing all of the prep and wanted to be able to present this history to us. Leo Borealis, welcome.
Thank you. Good evening to everybody and to you as well. Yeah, I think we'll try to have some fun here tonight.
Yes, and I joked about on the Sweden and probably on the Finland stream that when I asked you about historical questions, you always wanted to start way further back than I anticipate, and this one wasn't any different. When I asked you if you wanted to do a Nordic history stream or more, you wanted to start at the last ice age. That was your response.
Well, that's where it begins. So, what can I do?
We should start our stories where they begin. So, first, while we wait for some people to trickle in here in the first 10 minutes, we wanted to do some rank punditry just to get it out of our system. And Ludwig has been kind enough to create this slide here called Last Week in the Culture War. I think it was last stream or two streams ago, we talked a bit about, there was some questions from chat about our bunads, the festive suits that Norwegians put on, especially during our independence days. And this year, the decline is progressing as expected.
Yes, I think Norway continues to be the number one country in like trans tolerance, trans acceptance, and basically bending the knee to this batshit ideology stuff. So the slide is, of course, trying to be a bit of a parody on this thing where I don't really want this to be a show where we're just going to be angry about culture war stuff. But if there was sort of a culture war issue to be a little bit pissy about, it would be this one. So now they've kind of launched these gender-neutral bunads, as you can see here. There are some other designs as well. I think you can click on the link on the sort of marked
Yes, I
bunad
will.
in the title, and then you can see there's an article on NRK, the Norwegian state broadcasting channel, where they have a
Just give me a
slightly
moment
different
and I'll
design there.
Let's see here. And I'll run this through the Google Translate for our international.
So this
viewers.
is something that something. I mean, so, the 17th of May is coming up now very soon, and this is something I definitely will be looking out for, and just seeing how many people are actually going to go for these designs, and at least what kind of people are going to try to go for them. So there you go.
I honestly, they're just cutouts of the existing costumes, if you can call it that. And honestly, I don't think they look that pretty. It's and I really don't like this like sort of modern blazer look on the jacket. The traditional jacket is a lot.
No,
more
they're not.
interesting.
They're not like horribly ugly or anything. It's just that there's context behind it,
Obviously,
as to why you'd
so
want to have something like this.
what is and it also sparked a bit of a discussion in this article whether or not this could be called a festive suit or if it could have the moniker bunad. And of course, some of the more conservative people are against it because there are explicit reasons why it would be called bunad. And
The people
obviously,
who comment basically on newspapers are against it, and the people who write the articles are for it. So I think we know
Strangely enough.
how it's going to go. Yeah.
anyway,
Deeply subversive.
deeply subversive. Again, the
I must comment, however, on Ludwig Pap's wonderful illustration there. I think you made a mistake, though, Ludwig, with the placement of the eyes on on your avatar, because it kind of makes it look like you're wearing a gag ball.
That's a good point, actually. Now everybody's got that
it's,
in their
it's
head.
just
goddamn it.
insightful commentary from
It's
Ludwig.
clearly a honk nose.
If I saw it,
It's a bit imaginary. I should make the eyes bigger, I suppose. But it had to be the nose. Maybe I should just put the eyes like in the center, and then it sort of just goes in the background.
yeah, that's probably better.
Yeah.
Put them down like 25%.
This logo is it's a little bit difficult to turn it into a pollen ball. Actually, this sort of there's some design questions there that I've not that I haven't answered yet. But
Yes,
there's
a
another
walrus is a lot easier.
certainly is. So I think we have another culture war item on the menu as well.
We does,
See,
and it was
So-
Tucker Carlson being mentioned in one of the main newspapers in Norway this week because he's been doing this suntan, the video that's been going around of these very masculine Greek men, quote unquote, reclaiming masculinity, I suppose.
But
Let me see if I can find the.
Yeah, see if we can find the video. I mean, does any of you have any relation to what exactly is being produced there? Because I didn't know about it until I read it in the newspaper. So
I've been following these types of people on Twitter and other places, Telegram, like Raw Egg Nationalist, whom this documentary was evidently somewhat about. I haven't watched the actual thing itself, but him and Soul Bra and people like this. I've been following them for a while, and generally it gets kind of grifty, but there is some truth at the bottom of it anyway. And they get really heavy into stuff like micromanaging your hormone production, like testosterone. So, yeah, Bronze Age
There's
Pervert.
Bronze Age Pervert mentioned as well.
Yeah,
I forgot about that.
he's relevant in the conversation as well.
Yeah, they are BAP adjacent, these guys.
Yes,
Good
definitely.
point.
yeah,
Yeah,
I
that
follow
makes
I follow Raw Egg Nationalist sometimes on Twitter. So when you say that, it makes sense. I didn't make that connection when I saw the saw the trailer. I mean, it's just 1 minute long, but I can see why it's a good fodder to make fun of. I don't know if it was intentionally made that way or not to draw attention. But you can see, just summing up this article, they basically just go through the standard. It's exactly what you expect from this sort of neoliberal media. It's a kind of mocking. It starts off, you basically mock Carlson, that all of this stuff, like the demasculinization, is just it's what do you call it?
Happening.
The celebration?
Actually, it's good.
Yeah, the celebration parallax. It's a term that I learned recently. Is that if you think it's if it's good, then it's happening. If you think it's bad, then it's a conspiracy. So
yeah.
Talk about that you're kind of ridiculous if you think that pornography is a problem, or that dropping sperm count or dropping testosterone is a problem. And then it goes into a bit of fact check of Tucker Carlson, basically, that you can't apparently science says that you can't increase testosterone by exposing your balls to red light. They comment on this slogan too. That's apparently like the new kind of Nazi slogan, the sort of hard times make strong men.
Yeah, so basically the signal has pretty much gone out that if you've ever said that, you are not
get over the shooting the seed oils with the rifle.
Oh, I didn't notice that. Damn,
that's such a funny. Hang on.
I mean, this entire video is kind of like one big shit post, also in a certain way. So it's really meant.
Is that like a? That's a.
That's
yes,
gun as well.
I think that's
it's a 50 cal. Yeah.
And then, of course, even in the article, they go I imagine that this video was like 15 minutes long, the way they were going on about it in the Aftenposten article, because they were talking about, they're milking the cow so that they don't have a bucket. Fact check. It's like, fact check. This kind of low, what do you call this? Red lights can't produce testosterone. Fact check. Well, this doesn't actually help. There's just so many of these kind of like pedantic details they were going into to just do these sort of fact.
One moment, I have Raspberry Treacle says, Walrus, you should link who is the stream. I can't see on my phone. I'm not sure what you're saying here, Raspberry, but if you need me to link the video, I can do that. Sorry, continue.
Who was phone? Is that the question?
Who was phone?
Yeah.
I'll be right back. Why don't you meme more on Tucker Carlson for a moment?
I mean, it's Tucker. That Swedish media talked about Tucker Carlson. Is he like a punching bag in any of these big newspapers?
No, actually not. I have seen no traction with this. They kind of avoid Tucker Carlson, I think, because I have a distinct sense that a lot of Swedish people who would actually see Tucker, if they got a hold of who he is, would actually think that he's kind of, not insane, kind of reasonable. So I think they have taken the deliberate stance to not mention him at all.
That's why I actually think the Swedes are a lot smarter than the Norwegians in terms of like subversion and how they handle these things, because the this kind of fact check route, it just doesn't work. I think Academic Agent had a video on that as well, with the kind of dialectic no dialogue concept, where when you start fact checking people with these ridiculous things, people are just going to look it up and figure out that it was actually not as bad as they said.
Yeah, you walk straight into the Streisand effect, essentially, by just going, this isn't true. And then I mean, like here, for example, the ball tanning, it's kind of outrageous. And then the fact check also becomes kind of outrageous, and then people get interested and say, what is this? I gotta see the original video. And then they start, and then you get the effect that they look at the video and say, what the fuck is this? And then they say, who's this Tucker guy? And then they're probably, as they look up on YouTube, you can see us on the video there. Then you will see links to episodes about him. Well, let's just click one. Okay, he's he's very American. He's very polite. He's not screaming. He's laughing. He's kind of homely in a certain sense.
And he has a familiar last name. Yeah,
and then he's kind of reasonable. He's kind of anti-establishment, and in a kind of Midwestern way.
Yes, in particular with the Biden administration and the kind of whole PR apparatus being as clownish as it is currently, he has a lot of material to work with. He doesn't have to stretch very far or try to bring on these guests as he used to. Because I saw this on Twitter where I think it was the Washington Post that was doing this assassination piece on Tucker Carlson, where they showed some statistics about his episodes that he used the term ruling elites 900 times. He used the term great replacement 600 times, and he used like these different like these quote unquote dog whistles or these false information terms, and of course they got ratioed on it. But it seems like he has. I remember back when I first saw Tucker Carlson, like his shtick was basically where you bring on like the most kind of fringe leftist elements on your show. Like you bring on these sort of Black Lives Matter people or these more kind of fringe leftists, and you just kind of let them talk a little bit and you make fun of them and you try to get more material from them. But now it's and it shows that in the statistics as well. He's gone over to just doing monologues and just talking about what's going on in the Biden administration, because I think he has so much material just from like what's considered mainstream now.
Yeah, he doesn't have to seek out the cow to milk it, because the flow of milk is just going outside, so you can just dip the bucket and skim the cream off the top. It doesn't have to do anything.
So Walrus is back. Yes. I mean, you said this was a shitpost. Whoever made this for Tucker is sort of straddling the line perfectly here. This imagery with the cycle continues and some guy suntanning his balls is
you don't want it too close, because that could harm the sperm count, but I think if you get the right distance,
but it feels like very 2015 2016 meme magic.
Yeah, drink the egg, cold baths, wrestle with other men, throw the spear, shoot the seed oils. It's very mimetic.
All right.
You will live in the cold bath. You will drink the raw eggs.
You will fight other men.
Yeah.
Okay. I think that's enough rank punditry for today.
Most certainly.
Let's dive into some history, won't we? Now, Leo, do you want me to show the first picture that you sent me?
Yes, we should go in, just post the timeline thing to begin with. Now, this one isn't... it cuts off a little bit early, because it cuts off at 8,000, so... the Stone Age begins essentially by the end of the Younger Dryas period. So it's a couple of thousand years more, but it doesn't really matter. I mean, here's just to see a basic overview where we are into the various ages. And as you can see here, the Nordic Bronze Age starts later than the Bronze Age in the Mediterranean, the same of the pre-Roman Iron Age. There's a gap of a couple of hundred years before the technology tickles upwards from the Mediterranean basin. So that's essentially that.
So this is sorry.
There is also another direction through which the bronze comes north, straight from.
Yes, we'll come into that. We're not into the Bronze Age yet. Easy.
Sure.
Just to reiterate here before we dive into it, today's stream will mostly be covering Stone Age up to the Viking Ages. Is that correct? You said
yes.
The raid on the Lindisfarne.
Yeah, well, we will try to have a cutoff point there, because the Viking Age and the Vendel Viking Age, and again the early migration period and the early Middle Ages, it flows into each other in such an intense and well documented era that it needs its own stream, I think. And I think Beer Carl also thought that could be a good thing. So we will touch upon those eras as well now, but we won't go into the autistic detail that we will the next stream.
That's what I expected.
Prehistoric stuff, and well, I guess technically the early Viking Age would still be prehistoric in that there's no writing as such, but the sources from written civilizations of these peoples were so prolific that they deserve their own thing.
Mhm.
Indeed.
Very good. Next
So-
photo.
Yes, we can take the number 11 there. Migrations to Scandinavia.
Number 11. Hang on a moment. Ah, okay. So this one. No,
No, not that one. That's
not that
number...
one. It's the only one that's not showing. Hang on.
Okay.
Just a minute. For some reason, it didn't open any of these. Is this because? Oh, that's because it's a web picture format.
Oh, it's a WebP. Oh, I'm
I
sorry.
hate that format. Let me open it in a browser.
I'm piling on WebP as well.
Yeah. There's a good, like, I hate the Antichrist meme with the WebP there for you, Luddick.
Yes,
Coming right up.
very well. Essentially, you have two large initial colonization waves after the hot period starts, after the Younger Dryas. So as the ice, the Fennoscandic ice sheath recedes some 13,000 years ago, slowly north, you have the initial colonization of people around the southern Baltic, what will be Denmark, northern Germany, and Poland. At this point, Denmark, the seas haven't risen so far yet, so Denmark is still not really a collection of islands and a peninsula. It's all smaller, more like a land bridge, like you can see on this page here. And the first wave is of the Western hunter-gatherers. These are the same people that come, essentially, that colonize the entire Atlantic coast from Spain, Portugal, France, and move up into Britain. So these are proto-Celtic people, if you will, or rather parts of their family tree become the Celts a couple of thousand years later when they interact with other peoples.
So you're saying the Celts came from this northern?
No.
Section.
No. They migrated in from the south, from continental.
Oh, sorry, I was mixing up the. Okay, yep, I was mixing up the arrows. Yep.
And they aren't Celt at this point. It's like gonna take like another 5,000 years before they are the Celts. So
Right,
they are not really. They are the root people that become the Celts through the wagers of fate. In any way, so among the first cultures that what we have here is the so-called Brahma culture that lives around the southern Baltic coasts and in modern-day Denmark and parts of Scania. And this is, of course, a hunter-gatherer people. Southern Sweden, the parts that are uncovered in the early era here, as well as the southern tip of Norway. And as you can see, Doggerland is slowly being submerged during the waves during this era, but parts of it's still there. This is essentially Borean tundra. So it's not forested. It's like the northern areas of Sweden and Norway today. It's like very sparsely.
It's no vegetation really.
No, it's lich and moss, the odd bent, birch, and it's mostly reindeer herds and stuff like that. And as the ice recedes slowly northwards, this temperate zone, of course, creeps along the ice further north, and the seas also rise in this period until a point where Doggerland is entirely submerged. Denmark splits into the Isles and the peninsula, and essentially all of Mälardalen of central Sweden is underwater at this point, and the Baltic becomes a big lake for a couple of thousand years.
Well, there's also the as Doggerland recedes, the actual place where the land is rising, in contrast to the Doggerland and the Netherlands today falling, is actually the Gulf of Bothnia, right
Yeah.
around Vasa, and the Kvarken archipelago, which is, as you can see right here, basically in the middle of the thickest of the ice sheet, getting crushed to to hell, as they say. And this this depression caused by this absolutely massive ice sheet that crashed into the Scandi Mountains here, uh, it, it it still recedes today. The Finnish and Swedish coasts in the tightest point of the Baltic are still rising and gaining in land when the Dutch are falling into the sea.
Yeah, that's a thing that people often forget when they look at when they look at these things, is the plasticity of the crust of the Earth, because the thing is that when you have miles deep and this gargantuan ice shelf, and the Scandinavian shelf was the smallest one. When you have these massive ones like this northern Siberian one, but the biggest one was the Laurentide in northern Canada and over Greenland. And the thing is that once these weights, when the crust is pushed down, it is risen in weak spots and in the nearby depression zones. So one of the things that happened once the Laurentide and the Scandinavian ice sheets was removed, as the land rose back, rebounded, if you will, back from this immense weight, all that pressure that has been delivered out into weak points like around the Doggerland and Benelux countries and Holland today, for example. But a lot of that weight went out into the, or pressure rather, went out into the Mid-Atlantic ridge. So the Mid-Atlantic ridge has essentially just collapsed back into the sea. It has geological studies of it has seen that it has fallen dramatically. It was essentially a very large mountain chain during the Ice Age, and then not only the sea rose like something like 60 feet during the different meltwater pulses during the Younger Dryas period, but the North Atlantic ridge and certain parts of Europe also just completely sank, and not by a couple of feet, by as much as 50, 60 feet, just from the ice pressure.
Yeah, and you can certainly see that here, just comparing to the map we have today, that there's a lot of land that's no longer there.
Yes, most of that is actually there's also almost none of Finland there. For example, you can southwestern Finland, for example, is completely under the sea, as is all of Svealand basically. And this is basically the age where all the geography of these various nations are formed. Well, besides Norway, I guess, because the Scandi Mountains are even older than the most recent ice age. So a mountain chain, basically, that might have theorized to be as much larger even than the Himalayas today, but worn down by multiple ice ages and without significant geological activity since then, so they've remained somewhat.
If only we could go back, boys.
Yeah. Yeah, the thing is that Scandinavian mountain chain is theorized to be one of the oldest in the entire world, actually. That's also why we have such excellent slate, because all of our slate deposits here are Precambrian. And Precambrian slate is much better than post-Cambrian slate because it has no biological residues in it that weaken it. That's why much of the slate works for tiles and roofing and stuff like that from Sweden and Norway during the 17 and 1800s went on export to England.
I see. I didn't know that. It's interesting.
Yeah, and one last thing I would want to say about these very earliest geographical things is this ice sheet also what it mainly did, it was, of course, in addition to pressing down the Earth's crust itself, it also ground the rock under it into very fine gravel that underlies basically all of Sweden and Finland today, which has the effect of filtering water naturally into the purest groundwater on Earth. And that is why Sweden and Finland have the purest water, even naturally, that you can find anywhere.
Yeah, it's one thing that we're blessed with here in the Nordics. It's very nice water in general. I mean, obviously, probably the one in Finland and Sweden are purer, but I can say from my own experience in Norway that the water is pretty good here as well.
When the water goes into the treatment plant and they add the fluoride.
Oh yeah, no, I'm talking about, because usually when you, if you go to the more mountainous regions and live there, they usually don't have a lot of treatment on the water, so you get, or you can just get the chance to just, go up to a stream and then drink directly from it, and you can really feel the purity and the difference in the water.
Yeah, any treatment would be just a negative. It's that pure.
Yep.
An anecdote about this is about how a Finnish vodka company, in making its vodka, just takes water from a well in their backyard, and to get their vodka product into the U.S., they had to send the FDA a water sample from their well. And the FDA took the sample and analyzed it and sent a letter back saying, why did you send us distilled water?
Why are you cheating? Yeah.
Yeah. They videotaped and put a seal on the next sample to show, this is straight from the well in our backyard, and this is just the groundwater here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I find we're quite spoiled on an international scale. I feel like no matter where I go in the world, it's always a downgrade when I drink the water, whether it's from the tap or from one bottle.
Should drink
you can really taste the chloride in it.
Lodic. You'll get yellow fever.
Yikes.
Yeah. In any case, since we snowed in a little bit on this one, Walrus, could you put up the Carlson temperature variation chart in the same folder?
I'll just have to, because that's not a web piece. I need to change back to just a moment. And share window. Here we go. That was quite a small.
There we go. Yeah, it's a small one, but I thought it was kind of a good chart. What you essentially see here is the temperature change as we come out of the ice age. This is a kind of a granular chart. I have one to show that the dip that it comes out of is quite huge. In any case, what you see here is how the temperature has bounced up since 12,000 years ago, and it goes up here at about 8,000 years, and then it gradually declines into a colder temperature.
I see.
And you see
the peak would be at like 8,000 years. Is that it?
Yeah. And then the previous peak would have been out of this frame because the initial peak comes a bit different, because previous ice age, the temperatures are much higher. So, but in any case, just you can see the swings.
Yeah, it's quite dramatic.
Yeah. That's what happens when a large cometary debris stream hits the northern hemisphere. Get hot. Yeah. What essentially happened was not in real life, but the closest thing would have been like unleashing a stream of hydrogen bombs on the ice sheets of the the Laurentide and on Northern America and into the Atlantic. So it was kind of dramatic. In any case, back to the migratory patterns.
Do you want the last photo here in the?
No, I since it was a WebP, we can just skip it since we're tricky.
No, I have this one here.
No, that's much later.
Oh, okay, sorry.
I'm sorry about the WebP.
No, that's fine.
Yeah. So in any case, what the initial idea that people had that was the migration pattern was only Western hunter-gatherer that came in from the south, but recent genetic testing of archaeological finds in northern Sweden, northern Finland, and northern Norway has showed that there is a second colonization wave as the Atlantic, as the ice shelf recedes from the Atlantic and the Sea of Azov coasts, and going further inland, and then that's about 6,000 years before Christ. So 8,000 years ago, when you have that hot spike, it goes into a rapid, a secondary rapid thawing period, and then you have the eastern hunter-gatherer peoples from the that lived recently on the central European plains, really in the what today would be called, well, the Poland, Belarus kind of area, that are slowly migrating up the other way around the Baltic into Finland, the parts of it that exist at this part, and then they move along the northern coast into Norway, and then follow and then move south. And what happens once the ice sheet is almost gone, that these two groups meet, intertwine, and becomes their own. So they essentially call them the Scandinavian hunter-gatherers, because they are an admixture of both these differentiated peoples. So you can see this in the haplogroups. For example, the Western hunter-gatherers all carry the U5B1b and V type haplogroups, and the Eastern hunter-gatherers carry the Z haplogroup, and you can find this as they. So if you go and do a genetic test, you can see how much of each.
One? Yeah.
You probably have both. Most people in Scandinavia who are,
that would make sense going that far back. Yeah.
Yeah. I see that Lucky Pants are asking about the native Sami myth. Yeah, the problem with the Sami is also, I've been looking into the Sami question. We might just as well, address it since someone asked. It's really hard to find any real data on it, because
I will dispel the native Sami myth.
Yeah, because the researchers don't like to spell it out. But the idea, essentially, both genetic studies and the archaeological record essentially says that the Sami doesn't really move into the region, and then they live around the East Karelian area and towards the White Sea coast, the Sea of Azov, south of Murmansk, or the Kola Peninsula, at about 2,000 years before Christ. But they don't really begin to move into Finland proper and into the northern parts of the Scandinavian peninsula, like around 50 BC, 100 to 50 BC. So during the Roman period.
Yeah, that's quite late compared to these others.
Yeah, and I think that is also why the academics tend not to want to talk about this, because early academic studies of the Scandinavian can thought that these are the most primitive people around, therefore they must be some kind of first peoples.
Ancient, yeah.
Yeah, and then it showed up that no, not really. They are the last guys. Well, unless you.
They aren't the last guys. The Finns.
No. Well, you have the Neo Finn. That's true.
The new Finn, yes.
Yeah. Who wants the Sami Gibbs? So yeah, In any case, around that time, around 8,000 B, 7,000 BC, the southern areas of Sweden and Finland and Denmark are boreal, moving from boreal steppe, essentially, into taiga forests. And a couple of thousand years later, the most southernmost parts of both Finland, Sweden, and Denmark are becoming essentially mixed leafed forests. So, looking more like what it looks like today.
And, sorry if I'm derailing here, but looking at the sorry, I'll bring up the WebP again. Looking at the WebP, you would think that the coastline would be attractive as well, all the way around here. Or am I misunderstanding the patterns?
No, the thing is that around from like the Oslo fjord and downwards, the ice sheet remain in that southern tip of Norway for a very long time.
Oh, okay.
So the area becomes very difficult to traverse, and when you just see mile and mile of high glaciers along the coast, we're not going that way. Let's go the other way.
No, I can see that. So they basically stuck to the mountainous regions and the north then.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then they move south as it comes. Then you have, as the ice sheets recede, you of course the western hunter gatherers in Bohuslän and the Isles outside southern Norway move up along the Norwegian coast, and then you have the Forsna Hensbacka culture in that essentially stretches from southern Norway all around the way down into Bohuslän along the Swedish western coast and parts of northern Denmark. The problem here is also because there's a lot. This population is quite small. There's a lot of intermarrying. People move around because these are not sedentary people. These are hunter-gatherers. So they are essentially still nomads. So they move around a lot. And the problem is also when you talk about different cultures is that you usually look at material, material stuff like how do they exactly what technique do they use to nib their flint arrowheads and axes, what kind of pottery do they use? And the thing is that's not really culture per se, in a more human-centric way. It's more like just cultural technology. It's a very imprecise way. So say that this is a culture and this is a culture and we called it this and that. That's probably quite far from the truth.
Yes, especially this in the on the eastern regions from here in what is now Russia and all the rivers. There are a lot of different, as you say, archaeological cultures mixing around, but who knows about the tribes in the area in times like this. I think it's more pronounced over there than over here, over on the Scandinavian peninsula, for example, because there's more travel, and this is still very much lesser populated area at this time.
Yes, indeed. And the thing is also that the nomadic tribes also engage in extensive trade with each other when they meet up. There is this kind of idea, of liberal scholars that Neolithic people were very violent and where it's constant war, like chimpanzees against each other. There's no evidence for this. This is just liberal wish thinking that
I thought that was like bad. An old view of this. Like I remember watching things dispelling that quite a long time ago. I didn't know that still persisted as sort of like the view on things.
The liberals want that kind of view because the thing is also that most of these people talk the same language or a similar language. That of the Western hunter-gatherers, it was more or less the same thing. Of course, there's regional dialects and there's language drift, but think of it as modern Norwegian and Danish. You understand what they say, even if some of it is like, what was that? Okay, but I got like 90% of it.
Yeah, I
think
think the yeah.
so
Go ahead.
I think for like progressives, that's definitely true that they have this all against all kind of barbarian man view. But I have heard, some liberals, I guess more these classic liberals, who will say that the natural kind of trade is sort of the state of nature. So in a sense, that would be almost confirming the, I guess, more sort of right liberal view that the free market is
It
just kind of a
depends
natural
which
state.
of the classical liberals you follow. I don't remember
Yeah.
which one. Is it Hobbes has the state of nature as violence?
All against all
and,
the violence, and then I can't really tell which thinkers. I've just heard this idea floating around a lot that like the state of nature, like, I mean, the free market is basically the state of nature for man. So you're just kind of allowing.
Yeah, that's very much the
natural
Austrian
development of society.
Austrian/liberal, as in classical liberal.
I'll just attribute it to Mises, even though I can't verify.
Yeah, every other leftist probably gets it from like Rousseau or something, who also I think says that.
Yeah, I was just gonna counterweight this. There is, of course, the progressive idea that because things are progressing, everything in this age must have been completely barbaric, everybody killing everybody. But there's also the Rousseauian idea of this was paradise, and nobody fought, and
which is, it's a weird sort of like dichotomy with how the leftist thought on these things work, because it's pro-nature, anti-nature at the same time. It's very strange.
Yeah. The thing is, as always, the truth is somewhere in between. Of course, there was a lot of bloody conflict, but the thing is also that when you have these people who essentially are from the same background and they speak kind of the same language, it becomes automatically a less. How shall we say it?
The interaction is, you meet up like once every 2 years to like trade, and then you go on your way, right?
Yeah, there's also a lot of, but that is also because it's what you essentially have here in this part of Scandinavia and Northern Europe, is that what essentially you will very rarely run into another group that isn't a kin group in some way. And that's the mistake that many people do when they look at this. Oh, it was this and that. It's like, no, it was extremely violent, extremely bloody, when these people who met weren't kin groups and when they were competing for resources.
And Julius Flavius puts a good spin on it. What age competed with 20th century savages? With hundreds of millions killed, he says.
Well, if we take the cyclical idea, we can speculate that there were times when there was great trade and flourishing and merriment, and other times where the grinding of bones to dust did also happen.
Yeah, certainly. I think it's all part of the cycle. And to quote my video from a month ago or something, this too shall pass. So it's a cycle, I think. Anyway, sorry, I didn't mean to derail the discussion.
No. It's perfectly fine. Let's see here. Where were we? Yes. So in a sense, but people are in this part of the time mostly coastal in this region. This is also because as the forest starts to grow up, it becomes hard to traverse land, and essentially, if you want to go, say, from Scania to say modern day Stockholm during the, say, 5th millennium before Christ, it would take you 3 months to do it on foot. It will take you a week to do it by boat. So
right.
And so in this area, of course, the sea is also a source of abundant food sources and salt, because you have to. There's no salt mining, so you have to get your salt from the ocean.
Yeah.
Because people kind of often forget. Modern people often forget this, but you can't live without salt. So you can't go too far from the sea unless you have some with you. And people get around at this point mostly in various stretched skin and hide boats and log boats, which essentially you take a a big tree, hollow it out, and just go around in that.
Yeah.
It works quite perfectly. And this state of being actually goes on for quite a long time. It's essentially is sometime during the the later part of the 5th and early 4th millennium BC that new technology starts to trickle in from the south, and this is what called the funnel beaker culture, which introduces that distinct style of pottery. And this also comes, and this one comes from the. I think you can put in up the other picture there.
Hang on, I'm gonna have to.
You can take away the migration one, so you don't need to.
Yeah, no, we're done with that for now.
Yeah, and that one comes in from the. This is of course a bit later, but it has the idea that the funnel beaker culture is Central European and slightly from the east coming in, and this also brings with it the ideas of a different grave culture. So at this point, we start building megalithic graves and ritual sites. If you go into the Neolithic folder.
Yes. One moment. The Neolithic folder, yes. Do you want to have just the first picture, or which one would you like?
You can take the Neolithic graves, the 2.1 folder. Thank you.
Ah, okay.
And you can just take one of the
one of the graves.
Can take one of called the Hagados.
Yes. Here we go.
So this grave culture, building this kind of what do you call it in English? A cairn, perhaps, with standing stones around and a flat top stone to make a small room, is essentially something that you see all over Europe. This one are especially common in the Atlantic coast areas of Spain, Portugal, and France. This is also parts of the cultural goods that go into Great Britain, or the British Isles rather, and into Germany. And so the idea of, and some part of this culture also to build with large flat stones comes from the area of Poland and part of the Ukrainic, the Uralic steppe. So when the funnel beaker culture essentially comes into Scandinavia, it also not only carries this distinct shape of technology for making pottery, but it also has the ideas of burying your dead in communal megalithic structures.
So was this a religious thing, or is this some utilitarian reason for doing it?
This is probably purely cultural. This is religious and cultural, so there's no real utility to it. It's more of a people in this area are becoming more sedentary, so they start moving around less. So this is essentially the ideas of tying your ancestors to the land in which you inhabit. So this is the symbology that you have when you start doing this. And these are not single graves. These are communal graves that are added, so the dead are added to them and around them. And thus they become a ritual site, because ancestor worship is a thing during this for a very long time of humanity. So this is one version, kind of small. You can cycle through.
Yes.
I just wanted to add that this transition from the purely nomadic hunter-gatherer to the more sedentary happens through a gradual shift, eventually resulting in basically patrolling a territory in which some of these shrines may be. And so you're going through the years going from this shrine to that shrine and living around them as the resources permit. And
it becomes this sort of cycle of traveling around to these specific sites.
yes, eventually until the even more sedentary lifestyle from agriculture comes in.
Yeah.
And with these shrines, I just want to add that there is also, for example, when the Christians in Spain found these shrines, they deliberately made them and incorporated them into the churches today. So in Iberia, if you visit, small shrines in the middle of the countryside, they might literally be built around exactly that type of
I mean, that's something
rock
that,
formation.
that it seems Christianity has always been good at. Well, I say good. I think some we covered Varg on the Black Metal stream. I think some would disagree with me calling it that, but they've always been good at assimilating Christianity to fit local traditions.
Yeah,
Or adopting local traditions into Christianity.
But it
It's
also
the,
preserves them.
Christianity
Yes.
will kill your culture and wear it as a costume moment.
yeah.
I'm just
They-
sorry, just kind of riffing on the McIntyre thing, but no offense meant by that. I just thought it was a funny thought. Maybe the people in this time were thinking that they're just kind of hollowing out the pagan culture. But if I understand correctly, then it's people were basically nomads, just moving around a bit sort of aimlessly for food, and then they developed these kind of routines that were built around moving the grave sites, and from there,
yeah.
that's where the agriculture comes in.
Not aimlessly. I mean, these are people who live in a world where they, build. How should I say this? The more that I don't know if any of you are avid hikers.
Sometimes.
Yeah. Have you ever brought a friend, an urbanite, on a tour?
Yes. I've been that one back in the day as well, so
Yeah.
yes.
And you realize, and you know that kind of lost look they get once they can't see a road anymore.
Yeah, I can see that, yeah.
Yeah, and they have like no mental map of where they are in relation to things, and how they're just completely lost.
Mm-hmm.
Since there are no roads during this area.
No landmarks, yeah.
Take your ability to navigate and make that a primary focus of your survival skills. Then you can get an idea of these people knew probably at any given day exactly where they were in a mental map that stretches hundreds of miles in each direction.
I mean, if not, you build wards and you build, these kinds of structures to orient you anyway, so.
Yeah, there's a lot of things to go on. I mean, at a glance, many places might look the same, but if you have been there before and you don't take time to observe them, you see that they're quite distinct.
Yeah.
And so yeah, you see various styles here. This is another one. This is the one that goes like a long path. Essentially, it's like it has only stones on the sides and then overlays. Here's the only one overlaying stone is remaining, and these are a style that is particularly common in northern Spain and along the Bay of Biscay up into France.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have a somewhat later structure. These are earlier, but then you have a somewhat later structure of the one that is like that one that is covered with tuft and has a room inside of it.
Mm-hmm.
So if you can see the one next picture with the room there, you can see how large it is. So this one has
We're reaching proper mausoleum type structures.
Yeah, this is the more advanced version. This one is usually these one are rarer, of course, because it takes a lot more work to make them. So these are central places in Neolithic culture. and
The Barrow Vulpes persona points out.
yeah,
Yes.
this is more of a. I guess they're all are barrows, but this one is the most barrow-like, if you will. The other ones
Yeah, I can see what you're saying.
to the element and more of a certain style. But in any case, at this point, you will find that people are, especially with these large barrows, people aren't buried inside the barrow. They are buried in concentric circles, probably corresponding to social status, around the barrow in row after row after row, in like smaller circles, and then the circles that they have where they dug them out and looked with ground penetrating radar, no circle is really complete. So that's why they guess that the inner circle is probably for leaders, and then the next circle is for the the tribe sigmas and so forth and so forth.
Right. Tailing on that, where Julius Flavius says, were those graves disturbed like the ones in Egypt for study? They got useful information. It's still kind of messed up to have
I
been digging
think
up those
this
people and taking their
white-shirted
treasures.
man in shorts and sandals is disturbing it quite a lot right now.
Yeah.
To go back to the picture we showed earlier with the migration. I mean, you have these kinds of guys coming down from the north after the Ice Age. I mean, it's probably very much tundra-like back then. And then they reach the mountain ranges and figure, you know what, the mountain ranges are better than the frozen tundra. We're just going to live here for a while. I mean, we talked about, like, strong men in the Tucker thing. These must have been quite the people.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, much of the movement along the Norwegian coast is, of course, also done with boats. So
Yes.
And you're living inside the fjords, and so they're probably not, running naked across the mountain.
No, of course not.
To get the best ball tan. That's probably not what they are doing. But
it was more if this is preferable to the tundra, it's still, because it still provides quite a lot of problems in terms of survival. But yeah, moving to the seas is probably the smarter choice in the end.
Yeah, it's easier just to take the boat around into the next fjord than
Also, you have to let me have my Hyperborean view of my ancestors. I reserve the right for that.
As one should. In any case, then we can move on to the other folder.
The other Neolithic.
Yes.
Any specific you want to share from that?
Or you can just open one and go from there.
We'll do the funny fish boat. Let's see here. Or a whale boat, or whatever this is.
That's a moose.
Is that a moose? I see it now. Okay, yeah.
And sure. It's an axe. It's an axe head.
Very cool.
So, they call it an axe head but it's more of a hammer. But you can say the acrylic rod there goes into where the wood,
where the shaft would have been.
Yeah, the handle would have been going into it. This is probably a ritual weapon. It's not really someone who has put that amount of time into making it into a moose shape is probably not going to risk bashing some bear or something with it and then breaking off an ear or something on the moose.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I don't know if my sense of proportion is weird here, but you have to have a pretty big hand to get to hold around this thing.
Yeah, it's not small. If you take the next picture, if you go to the left, so to speak. So the extreme right. There you can see a flint axe. People say some of these things are small, but some of these things are pretty fucking big.
Wow. Yeah, and as you said, if this was ritual as well, maybe that plays into the size. But I mean, looking at this, if this is more of an everyday tool, it's pretty big.
This is, as you can see, this is one of those solid wedge type stone axes. So it doesn't have a borehole. So this one essentially has a split branch and then a cross section on the middle with probably cord of some sort to hold it.
You tie it with cord, yeah.
Then probably lather it with pitch or some.
Persona says that this was probably for making the dugout canoes. That certainly does make sense.
Yeah, this isn't a weapon. This is a woodworking axe, probably something really heavy duty. Because after a while, these chisel-shaped axes chip when you use them a lot. So this large size is also probably for impact weight, but also to have material that when it chips, you can
keep going.
Yeah, you can keep going, and you can rework the edge so it isn't jagged, but it's smooth.
Yeah.
Or reasonably smooth, at least. But this one is a flint kind of, and you can see the distinct chipping pattern. So this one is from the earlier Stone Age. The other ones are from the Neolithic. This one is probably from the Mesolithic, the mid era.
Right.
Essentially, then what happens after the funnel beaker culture is well established is that about 3,000 years ago, or rather 5,000 years ago, 3000 BC, you have the Yamna expansion from the Eurasian steppe. And the Yamna has culture has many funny words. Just the Yamna, the Kurgan, and other things. But they are the same people. And they go through a migratory expansion during this era and move into the European continent, and then into Germany and into southern Scandinavia and into the Baltics and into Finland. These are also called the corded ware because they have this corded stripe patterns on their earthware. Again, scientists being really original in how they name things. So, the science here looks like braided cords. Let's call it the corded ware culture. Oh, okay.
These are the cord people. Yeah.
Yeah, but this is more of a kind of an east expanding conquest. So, what essentially happens here in the genetic record is that essentially once all is said and done, you see about a halving of the genetic signal for the Western and Eastern hunter-gatherers in the Scandinavian era, and also in Germany and Poland. And what happens is that these two peoples then goes through a union and essentially create an entire new people, the Germanic people, or the North Germanic peoples. So essentially that people, or distinct race, if we dare say that word on this channel, is born from the union of the European hunter-gatherers and the Kurgan steppe people.
Right.
And in Scandinavia, this does a little cultural split, and this creates the so-called battle axe culture that you can see here, that does interesting things with stone. This is a porphyrious double-headed stone axe from, I think, Sweden somewhere.
Yeah, is this from Dala?
Yeah.
Interesting.
And this is kind of an early example. If you scroll through the axes, you can see why they're. Here you can see these are from Norway. And these
they
are
have like a striking side as well on the right there for.
Yeah, it's the idea here for the design is more like that's why they call it a boat, because they have this prow shape in the end. But more like axe hammer combos.
But I can see in terms of like as a tool, this must be very useful, and the design seems to be a lot more. I mean, it's upgraded from the earlier one. This seems much more smooth and specific.
And these are made in igneous rock types that have a very high iron count. I think these ones, the black ones here, are made in what's it called? I have kind of lost it. It's called.
I can maybe find it here.
In any case, these are rock types that are harder than granite, and that's why you get that sheen on them when you polish them, because they have a very fine granulate, and they are black
Right.
because they contain a large amount of iron and another metallic ideas.
Yeah, I would mention here that a lot of early heavily ironed rocks, and even just iron, even in the Bronze Age and before the Bronze Age, there was iron tools and weapons, and mostly these were out of the very few natural deposits that exist in just material lying around, and spectacularly meteorites, because in space there's a lot of the rock that comes down to Earth is almost pure iron, and these godly stories of weapons from the stars or the weapons of gods can be speculated and secularized from this this mythical form into meteorite weapons that are stone of heavy iron composition.
I did 30 seconds of Googling, and this might be basalt.
No, now I remember it's and it's gone. I don't know what's
okay.
Whatever. Diabase, is it? Diabase.
Okay.
So it's heavier than basalt. But basalt is essentially what happens when a lava flow hits the ocean. That's why they get this hexagonal pillar shape.
Yeah.
Because the crystalline structure of the stone freezes in that shape when it get that shock treatment. Diabase is a bit heavier, that's why, and a bit darker.
Mm-hmm.
And so, someone said they are smooth as hell. They they have really polished them. If you can go through.
But I mean, these must have lasted quite a bit longer than the earlier ones we looked at.
Yeah. And you can see there are various types of igneous rocks here, but they all have that percussion. This one is really pronounced with the percussion side of things. But these were not really used as, if you will, tools. These are weapons.
Right. Okay.
So, and that's also why they are so polished, because they are status symbols.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, I was going to ask you about that they were actually battle axes, because they do look very utilitarian. But like, is the percussion side, what's that for? Is it to smash armor or something?
No, it's essentially to use as a blunt instrument, because
I mean, for hunting, that would be very useful if you want to just whack something that you hit with an arrow or something like that.
Even heavy layers of clothing can, stop a sharp edge very easily. So a blunt blow goes right through them.
Yeah, so this is essentially utilizing the having as a versatile weapons as you can. But also it's this also ties into the religion, because the Indo-European component, that is the Kurgan or the Yamna culture that comes into here, also has distinct religious systems of gods, and the prime of this is the primacy of this pantheon is the Sky Father and the Storm God. The Sky Father is within the European line is called just Pepper, which has the which essentially just means sky and father. You can hear that because the Indo-European languages here is very close to the Greek and Latin. So you have the dies, spelled D-Y-E-U-S.
Right, yeah.
So like Deus, where it comes down into the Latin. And Peter, which is P-H-T-E-R.
Pater.
So
Yeah.
Pater, where it comes, or the Greek, where the R goes a little bit away. So it's literally, and the Dios comes from the concept of sky. So that's literally his name. The storm god is known as Puerkonos, which means the striker. And the storm god is essentially the sky father's strongest ally. He's the one who brings rain. He's the one who slays dragons and other fell things, wielding a hammer axe like this one, which has an axe and a striking side and a cutting
Feels
side.
like there's some very early. I mean, there's probably tons of religions you can connect that to, but this feels very proto Norse to me.
Yes, these are. If you go into like the primary attributes of the Sky Father is that he's one-eyed because the sun is his open eye. His one eye is closed, and the one that is open is the sun. And he helps create the world from the first sacrifice, and he later then gives cattle as a gift for men to sacrifice unto the gods to kind of perpetuate this cycle. And he also creates two divine horse twins that in turn mankind originates from. And but even in this early era, the storm god Puerkonos is very opposite, the origin of Thor, because he's the striker, he's the Lord of Oaks, he's known as, and the Lord, and he wields a weapon that is called lightning, essentially in the idea.
Right.
So that is the mythology of the god. There's also there's a god, dawn goddess, and some other. There's an entire pantheon, and many of them are very similar to the Norse one. And you see this. You can see these pantheon also exist within the Vedic tradition of India. And it also comes into the Greek and the classic civilization, and also into the Germanics then. So the root is essentially the same. It's just the same gods dressed in different clothes.
Yes, and I just want to elaborate on the two main gods that you laid out here, and the striker, Perkunos, Perkele, as you said. He is described as this slayer of beasts and deep dragons, and as such gains the role of protector of the common folk, the people, and being a god of the common folk and people. Whereas the Sky Father, the All Father, is more of a god for the upper class, the god kings, and such.
Yeah, and warriors. He's very much
upper class warriors are synonymous, of course.
Yeah, of course.
In this area, it is, yeah.
Yeah, most areas at this time actually. So yeah, since the we can go back into our old friends in the spheres when we are talking about the different classes. The merchant, the warrior, the priests. This is very much a time where warriors are in charge with the aid of priests. And
this is something I even talked about in my very first video when I pulled from the early chapters of Revolt Against the Modern World. It's the idea of the warrior king being chosen by the gods, and this having sort of like an intrinsic value to a tribe or a people. And it's just something that was, the mandate of heaven is actually, it's not just a religious thing, it's part of our culture, whether we like it or not, I suppose.
Yes, and it goes back into all of this, both the Indo-European and as someone in the chat is pointing out also the Egyptian culture, because there is always that the gods exist, they create the world, and then they create demigods, and from these demigods spring man. So the idea of essentially that is also why you find these really interesting listings from the, now we're going forward a bit, but from the Anglo-Saxon era, for example, in England, and where the kings of Britannia start listing the bloodline, saying if you go back far enough, you will find Odin there, because the idea is that kingship, to be king, you must be able to show that you are of a divine bloodline. You just can say that, that you don't have a divine mandate unless you can really point out that no, I'm a direct descendant, because in a sense all men are descendant of the gods, but you must be a direct descendant. It's it's splitting hairs, but that's the way it had by that time it had devolved into that.
Longhouse, the Northman live commentary when.
Oh, that would be something. Yeah.
Once it goes into the open domain, perhaps, but
maybe.
Yeah, but this is also, since we're talking, you mentioned Evola, this is also the idea of in the less fallen age, you don't need a long list. The idea isn't that you are related to the god in a blood tie, so to speak. That this is my direct ancestor.
You can sort of mantle the spirit.
Because that is self-evident. The idea is the king must embody in his he must take upon the aspect of the god and embody the god to have.
It sounds silly to our modern mind, but it's you can basically boil it down to, well, if you weren't our king, then you wouldn't be our king, kind of deal. The fates are sort of behind you in a sense that is hard to.
It not necessarily isn't as alien to us as you might think, because Christians, of course, seek to emulate Christ, and to be Christ-like is every Christian's goal, and in exactly the same way these early pagans would seek to emulate the gods they worshipped.
Yeah, and I think the Christian tradition has a similar thing. I come back to the book that's called Patriarcha by Robert Filmer, where he sort of makes the argument that that a divine king has to basically have a kinship to one of the biblical patriarchs. I think it's a very similar idea.
Yeah, I think this entire idea comes really from how should I say it? This is very deeply ingrained in human culture. It's more like, it's almost on a level where it isn't culture, it's just human. You have to do this to rule. Unless you hold the mandate of heaven, you can't rule. You will not be accepted as ruler.
Yeah, it's one of those things that either it is or it isn't sort of deal, and if it is, then you know it, you can feel it, you know.
Yeah, I was just about to say democracy BTFO.
Yes, it's an intuitive system.
And I think you have the concept of like the usurper in many cultures, is that you could have power and you could take the throne, but if you don't have the correct lineage and you don't have the mandate of heaven, you're not a legitimate king. So it's more than just power.
Yeah, then it's just naked based power. It's filthy and debased in some way. Power without divinity in a certain sense isn't good, because that person. Because but it is in some way that someone who wields. It also comes down to the kind of idea that someone who wields power, who does not embody the divine principle, cannot help but to fall victim to his beastly nature as a man. He can't help himself. He can't control it without embodying the divine principle. You have nothing that keeps you in check, and that power will get to you. That's the idea that power corrupts. Then the only shield against that corruption is the divine, because without the divine, well, the demons will get you.
Yes.
And it doesn't matter how good of a person you are. It will bring you down eventually.
Yeah, yeah.
So this is basically every liberal historian ever implicating themselves as not fit to rule because they say power corrupts everybody.
Yes. But it's also a different way of organizing or sort of ordaining the culture of your society. Because when everyone is on board with the idea that the divine is what is checking the king, then everyone has to hold the king to those standards, in a sense. So it provides a clear-cut set of kingly sort of ways of being or divine ways of acting that everyone can either see or not see that the king is embodying.
Yes.
Unlike a bunch of weird rules and legislation, etc.
Yeah, and that also comes in as Evola points out in his writings. If you have a king that embodies these principles, or some form of leader who doesn't really matter what you call him.
I think
Then
chieftain
essentially what you have in the rest of your society, since your society will naturally orient themselves from this. This creates a divine hierarchy. This ennobles the entire society from king to the lowest peasant.
Yeah.
Because they are part of that divine hierarchy. Without this frame, essentially the divine is denied to the lower classes because they need someone who can, if you will, set the example within this realm, because they can't, they're they don't have the time on their hands. They might be peasants and not warriors because, well, they don't have the capacity to be warriors. War in a culture like this during human early history, being a warrior is a much more of a complex thing than it is today. It's just to simply be able to kill. It's more of like you're more of a
it's more of a lifestyle.
Yeah, you're not only a warrior, you're also supposed to be a scholar. You're supposed to almost be like what would be a modern conception? Perhaps perhaps a Buddhist monk who isn't chaste.
Yeah.
So the idea is only that the warrior must also not only hone his body, he must also hone his mind, because a body without a well-trained body without a sharp mind is useless. So it's essentially a part of the divine hierarchy that he must also train his inner life. And he is also, of course, part of that greater tradition. So
you can sort of secularize that a bit again by bringing up sort of a lot of these early cultures and ritual combat, which was a lot more common than I suppose the liberal historian would like you to think, in which a lot fewer people end up dying.
Yeah, the pitched battle is kind of a modern thing. Ritual combat between champions is usually the idea that happens, and then everybody else, stands around screaming and banging and tooting horns and stuff, and while two guys go at it. And this is often there's no shame in losing either. So one side loses, and well, that doesn't, you're going to be banged up pretty badly, but the idea isn't to kill you. The idea is to defeat you, because any lout can kill. But to defeat your enemy and make him yield, and he's not mortally wounded, that really shows skill. That's more skill. That is more impressive than just killing the guy.
And bringing defeat upon from one divine lineage to another, and defeating them is, as a concept of war, is much more clean than, say, the modern democratic conception of war,
The meat grinder.
where since the source of power is the whole demos itself, that
Yeah.
means the whole demos itself, including so-called civilians, are instinctively recognized as combatants since they are the source of power, instead of this one divine lineage, a person of divine lineage.
This comes back to the René Guénon, I think, his criticisms of modern war, where, like you've already mentioned, the kind of older style of war and combat was considered like this sort of almost divination ritual, like this kind of self-actualization process. And the modern war is really like the warrior is there more as a machine operator. In a sense, you just you train people en masse to operate these gigantic machines, and they go in there, get killed in high numbers, and if they return, they're anything but self-actualized. They're usually quite mentally destroyed and not capable of going back into society. So it's a completely different kind of war that people fight currently. And it's so easy for modern people to just kind of project this image of war onto the past, not understanding that it had a completely different significance to those people.
Yeah, I think I would recommend upon the idea here is to read the Im Stahlgewitter by Ernst Junger, The Storm of Steel.
Yeah.
It goes very into the idea of war as a transcendent activity. And it perhaps says a lot of Ernst Junger that he's able to stay in this mindset during the First World War, which was an absolute horror show.
Yeah, Jesus. Anyway, that was a long way off from a boat axe, but I suppose that tells us something about how
our famous tangent.
how deeply connected we feel to some of this stuff, I suppose. Do you want to move on, or should we talk more about this Indo-European culture?
No, we can move on. This is more like seeing some more of the root influences that we will be coming back to. And
I have a folder here called Bronze Age.
Yes. Then we can go into the Nordic Bronze Age.
The general one, or would you like the...
I would like to go into the general one, to begin with that one.
Gotta reshare my screen. Once.
Here you can take up the one that's called Trade Networks.
Trade Networks. Which
It's
one is
the map.
Ah, yes.
Here you can see this is the trade networks that starts to come into to existence during the second millennium BC.
Isn't this almost just half a map? I mean, look at the rivers in Russia. You could have a completely second set of lines over there.
Yeah. This one isn't complete, actually, because there are actually two networks. There is one that runs from the Mediterranean basis up through Germany and along the Iberian coasts onto Scandinavia and the British Isles. Then there is a northern trade route that goes through the Baltic into the Russian river systems and into the Black Sea.
Yeah, especially right there where you see the modern city of Riga, right there where there's the northeasternmost red amber sign. And that's the Daugava River, and that runs up to, in its source, very close to the starting point of the Volga.
Yeah,
and the Volga is right into the Caspian. So,
indeed. So you essentially have two trade networks here, and the two network meet in the southern Baltic. So that is the Mediterranean trade network and the Uralic and the Russian steppe, so to speak, does not really tie into the Mediterranean basin trading network per se. It bridges though in the southern Baltic, in Scandinavia, in Finland, Sweden, and the Baltic region. The thing here is that here you can also see the trade network for copper and tin from the British Isles, because
Yep.
bronze at this point is not manufactured in the early stages in Scandinavia. So it is essentially that tin goes from Britain and Iberia into the central network where it's made into bronze, and bronze is transported northwards into Germany and Scandinavia. One thing that isn't seen here is that the Hittites in Anatolia also have tin mines. So there is a pure bronze flowing out of the Hittite area, but that doesn't really move up into Scandinavia. It stays in the Mediterranean basin. The primary trade, however, from Scandinavia into the Mediterranean basin is amber and furs. Much of the amber trade goes from Scandinavia to Egypt, where it is traded for lapis lazuli and blue glass, because the Egyptians are the only ones who can produce clear blue glass at this point in time.
Uh-huh.
And since it's highly sought after, blue glass is more sought after than gold in Scandinavia at this point.
Is this purely as sort of cosmetics and ritual stuff, or is there any usage?
No, it's usually usually in the form of glass beads. So it's used instead of, if you can get it, you want glass instead of gold. This is also because this is of course there's a religious aspect to this as well, because they hold the color of of both the sea and the sky, and they are the only material that you have that do that. Well polished bronze and gold, well, it's yellowy, so well, if you can trade the gold for blue glass and then have the rest in bronze, that's okay as well. But so there is probably a religious aspect to why exactly the blue glass were so popular up here. And the Egyptians are, of course, very sun worshippers, so having clear amber from the Baltic is like having. I think there's some sources in Egypt where they praise it as the tears of the sun itself, especially the clear flecked amber that reflects light. It's like since it all has all these kind of like reflecting ships inside it.
Right.
It's reflecting flecks. It can when
It's
you
a bit
when
like
you shine sun,
kaleidoscopic.
yeah, it bounces light inside of it from these various ships, so it looks like it glows when you have it. So and that was the Egyptians were really hot on that one, so it sold well. There's another picture there where you can see it's called Bronze Age Scandinavia 2. It's a chart with an axe on it, and there you can see the mapping of where the bronze in Scandinavia originates. As you can see here, this is the one. So here you can see essentially that it's from the German Alps, from Slovakia, and that region. So you find very little Iberian or Anatolian bronze or tin or copper in Scandinavia. Almost all of it is from the Alps, and all the tin is coming from mines in Britain or Wales.
Right.
But I will also say that
Cool.
this is concurring to the later period when bronze production is actually made in Scandinavia and Germany. The earliest finds of bronze weapons and objects in Scandinavia, then it's almost all from the Mediterranean basin. So this essentially, as technology is the technology of making bronze is exported, and mining the minerals needed to make it spread across Europe. Of course, you don't buy it from the closest source.
Yeah.
To keep down costs and delivery times. This is also an interesting thing, because you see, if you go back to the southern and the northern trading networks, when you have later in the area the Bronze Age collapse, where the Mycenaean and Minoan cultures essentially is wiped out, and the Hittites essentially diminished to where they become a footnote in history, and the Egyptians are essentially the only culture that survives in somewhat intact, if heavily damaged. The entire Mediterranean trade network collapses; it ceases to exist. However, the northern trading network between the British Isles, Scandinavia, and the Russian river system into the steppe and towards the Ural Mountains and the Caspian, that one survives into the late Bronze Age and early Iron Age. So it survives for almost well over 1,000 years after the Mediterranean has collapsed.
I don't think it fundamentally ever collapses as such. Maybe it has a downturn and upturns, but I don't think that one ever collapses in the way the Mediterranean was.
No, absolutely not. It's more like it fizzles out as things go. Because essentially what you then have is the trade for bronze, and because then you start mining copper in Scandinavia because they find deposits that are easy to access, and the tin also comes into play from the Welsh mines. But once the iron, you get the technology to use iron to smelt iron, and which is found in abundance in Scandinavia. The prime engine of the river system trade with the Russian complex and with the Britain, it ceases to exist. There's nothing to be gained really, because you are moving away from the primary wares that are traded.
Now, do we have any indication of when I look at this map on the amount of goods being traded?
Well,
because this is a large network, but is this, what are we talking about here?
For example, one of the earliest burial mounds, Bronze Age, in Uppsala in Sweden, it contained more gold than any one of the burial mounds in the Viking Age, for example, that were mere copies of it, 2,000, 2,500 years later. Yeah. So this Bronze Age trade was probably so much more than we could imagine. We imagine these Vikings going around and plundering everything and having these huge chests full of gold, but no, they didn't have nearly as much compared to this Bronze Age did.
No, I'm just having a moment, I suppose a demodernizing moment. I just had never thought about the extent of the trade network in pre-modern times, but so that's cool. I'm learning. My third eye is opening.
Yeah, to honk with you a little bit more here, there's also an Eastern trading network here that essentially ends in what is then Egypt and Egyptian Canaan, up in modern day Israel, and it goes on because the Egyptians essentially control the entire side of modern day Israel and Lebanon along the area here. So they tied into the Tigris and Euphrates, the Babylonians, and the up into the mountains towards the Proto-Persians and towards India, towards the Indus Valley. So those were also goods were going quite afar.
Yeah, I think Afghanistan was the nearest other source of tin besides Wales and Iberia here.
So how long would it take to complete one of these two-way trips if you want to say go from Norway or Sweden down one of these routes?
Essentially, no one really made the entire route. It's a lot of handoffs in between.
I was going to say it's probably trading points all along the way here.
Yeah. So essentially, you have like if you think that you have of course the the Mediterranean could essentially be split in two sides, the eastern and the western, by Italy and the Isle of Sicily. So essentially, that's the drop-off point for the Proto-Greeks. The Proto-Mycenaeans have colonies there. They come back to those areas in the Hellenistic period, when Greece becomes, after this, when they become the local superpower. But that is quite a bit later. And then it goes up into the German and Frankish river systems, and then that's essentially, and then the northern Baltic coast is essentially the handoff point between say the Germanic Central European side and the Scandinavian side, and then of course there is trade across from the British Isles all over the place to the coastal regions, because you don't have ocean-going vessels at this time, so you essentially are skimming the coast.
Yeah. Yeah, very cool. Very cool. Did you want to go to another photo?
Yeah, since we're talking about boats, you can take the one with the boat.
The one
to your left. 2 steps to your left.
Ah, the reconstruction.
Yes. This is a reconstruction of the so-called Hjortspring boat that was found in Denmark. And this is a kind of interesting little thing. So it's a long canoe, so to speak. And this one is used for type is used for a very long time. It's essentially used from the early Bronze Age all into the pre-Roman Iron Age. They are designed essentially with wood planks that are sewn together with cord from bark, spruce roots, or rawhide, and then they use onto this clinker frame, and then they use pitch or other resins to coat the seams to make it watertight.
Interesting.
And then then you have like a long dugout log that forms the bottom plank, which acts like a keel, and then you have 2 additional planks like they are attached on both sides of the side to fashion the hull.
Mm-hmm.
And then those stem planks on the top and the bottom extend forward. Those are like the horn-like structures that extends there.
Yeah.
In the prow and in the rear, and then there is like a clinker style, like struts inside to keep the sides from collapsing inwards, and most of these are then the larger parts are fastened with wooden pegs. So because this is before pre-Iron Age technology, so you can't make iron nails, and bronze doesn't stress well. So bronze nails aren't the best idea in a boat.
No, they'll probably just give way under pressure.
I didn't know anything about this. That this was a actual Nordic reconstruction. When I saw this picture just now, I thought, is this a reconstruction of the boats of the sea peoples that Ramesses II depicts in Egypt? Because this very much looks exactly like that. And if I were to speculate, it's probably the different branch of the Yamna that split out south instead of north.
Yeah, the thing here is that you might think so, but no. The Yamnaya were a horse people. They rode horses, and they are essentially the culture that brings the chariot into great prominence in Europe. So the boat is essentially a local European idea here. It's more of a thing that you have like a convergent evolution. If you have the same kind of materials to work with. You will end up at a kind of the same design when you have the same kind of
Yeah, I suppose that makes sense too. Yeah.
yeah, because you find that various stabilities, but the double prow here you can also see the double prow design that you will see in the long ships later on. It's if you go for the Egyptian and the later the Greek triremes, for example, they have a very distinct front and rear, a prow and a bow. But the Northern European style is it's similar in both ways, so it doesn't diverge. If you go over to the drawing there, we can see that is called petroglyph Bronze Age boats.
Yep.
There you can see them in these are drawings from various sources of rock art, where you can see the distinct style of the prows and of the double pronged style in the boats.
Huh. So where are these carving or drawings from?
These are from Bohuslän and all around really. These are various ideas. If you go, we can go and look at the real thing. If you go into the folder that is called Bronze Age Rock Art.
Yep. Just a moment. Let's see here. Here we go.
Yes, this one is from Tanum, one of the largest sites in Sweden. And here you can see the same kind of boat structure. Some kind of deer, a guy with a shield, a very large spear, and happy.
Direct penis.
Here you can see more from Tanum. We can see one of the longer styles, because the thing is that these yacht spring boats, as they're called, came in a lot of sizes, and some of them were really large.
Right. That's one of those axes as well.
Yeah, you can see it there that it has the axe head and the percussion end. But these are Bronze Age. You are starting to move away from those Stone Age axes. These carvings are from the Bronze Age. You will find none of these are from the Stone Age. Right. There are rock carvings from the Stone Age, but they are very simple.
Okay.
That's probably because bashing granite with a granite axe doesn't work so well. You need something that is harder. If you take the one that is called Fossum, there you can see it. Here you can see that these boats are very central to the culture and life of people in Scandinavia at this time. And this one, as you can see here, there are both battle scenes, hunting scenes, and some other weird stuff. We go down into look into the lower left corner. You can see a guy there creeping up on an unsuspecting spectator.
This guy's about to get bonked.
Yeah, you can see here that the guy who's getting bonked is quite obviously not a warrior, because he doesn't have the sword scabbard.
Yep.
And he doesn't have the erect PP.
Right.
I was going to make a joke, but okay, I see it was actually what I thought it was.
Yep.
What is going on down here? Is this some kind of lobster?
Unsure. It looks like a dog confronting some kind of thing. Perhaps a lobster. The dog is not amused by the lobster.
Maybe.
Peterson was right. They're at the top of the hierarchy.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah.
If you go up to the like upper right corner, it looks like two guys who are taking you know what at the same time. I'm not sure what to make of
Oh,
this.
What's going on here?
That is probably some kind of ritualized dance. You see, they're
probably.
having the and all these small dots that you can see here. First there was an idea that it was some kind of it's a pit where you sacrifice blood in, but they are not. They are actually constellations.
Mm. The stars.
Yeah, so that's why some are much bigger and some are very small, and you have this odd clustering. Some are solitary, and some of them are kind of shoved into where they should. It looks a bit awkward with all the other designs. They're kind of too close, but that is because they're supposed to match up in a pattern.
Mm-hmm.
So there you have it, and you can see also that you have 2 feet in the central upper side by the solar symbol.
Oh yeah, here.
There you have 2 feet, and
take your pictures now, boys.
Yeah. And also, if you down in the left here, don't zoom out.
Oh.
If you zoom in there, and you can see the guys who are fighting with shields and clubs and tooting horns here. Here you can see something that
Here's a horn.
Yeah, this guy's tooting horns and some kind of celestial object, and he's carrying what probably is a shield on his back there. You can see the thing.
Yeah.
Between the guy wielding the axe at nothing and the guy tooting the horn, you can see what is a helmet design. You see that, and with 2 horn-like things. We will see actual copies of those helmets later on.
Mm-hmm.
So
this guy's attacking a star.
Yeah, ballsy.
Yeah.
So there's also some elk pole vaulting going on there. It seems in two of the photos.
Yeah, I think he's
there's
hunting.
one in the upper right corner on the zoom here as well, where it seems the spear is so big that it seems like he's doing a pole vault.
I think that's an artistic interpretation, don't you?
Yeah, perhaps.
What can a man want but a very large spear?
Here you have the virgin archer versus the Chad axe wielder.
Yeah. Even then, they know that they, using ranged weapons in a fight. But that's also probably because that depicts hunting. You can see the guy with the spear who hunts
these are probably helping this guy hunt. I was just making a joke.
The people interacting with animals, like in the hunting sense, don't have an erect pee-pee because they are forming a. It's not an act of virility in the same action.
Interesting.
If you open up the one called Nemforsen, because the other one is from Bohuslän, so that's a coastal one.
Of elk.
Yeah, Nemforsen is one of those elk hunting sites where you have like they built fences and stuff like that and drove elk herds into it. So the elk around this is up in the Northlands. So you see boats here as well. There's another one called Nemforsen as well. That is Nemforsen Hällristning 230 Näsåker.
Yep, I see it. I think it's this one? No. Nope. Oh, I think we have another web piece.
Okay. It's more of the same. Essentially, it's what it shows is a lot less of this ritual warriors in combat and axes. It's more, and it's just elks all over the rock carvings at Nemforsen in Ångermanland.
So this is the prehistoric version of the elk in the sunset picture that's so common in Norwegian cabins, I guess.
Yeah, and you can see that the boat there also has an elk head as in the prow.
Oh yeah.
So, and there's another small boat above that. You have 2 guys doing something with two confused elk between them. If you zoom out, above them there's another small boat, and that one also has an elk head.
Clearly have to watch out for the swinging moose.
Yeah. So Here you can see that the elk is very central to the people up here, up
So
further north.
in the bottom right there, is that an elk being humped by a fox?
Yeah, and you can see there's an elk, and above that,
Could be a
above
wolf.
looks more fox-like. That's true, but and you have a salmon there. If you can look at to the left, there.
Where? Here? This?
Down further.
Oh yeah. Oh
You can see
wow.
you have
Yeah.
an elk and a salmon
That's a
meeting.
pretty good salmon. Yeah.
Because Nämforsen is also, famous for its salmon population. It's lots of rapids and stuff like that. So those are the central foodstuffs of the people who would live there. The elk and the surrounding forest who come to the river to drink, and then of course the salmon in the streams.
Interesting.
Can the elks do that? Like they fish for salmon with their mouths?
I don't think
they
so.
eat salmon.
They're mostly herbivores.
Yeah.
I was thinking
think
like a
this is more
bear.
the
They
people-
would just like try to just grab in the river and pick up the fish.
I think perhaps when the salmon spawn, then the rapids are just full of dead salmon. Perhaps, I mean, you have cows out in the fields eating like dead rabbits and stuff like that to get nutrients, minerals and stuff like that. So it's not uncommon, but I think that I have no, I am not qualified to make that interpretation. In any case, here you can see a rock art from one of the king graves. This is one of those large burial mounds. And here you can see solar wheels and, of course, a man on a chariot being more cool than everyone else around him, who just have to stand around and look at him.
I can see that.
Clearly driving some slaves in front of him.
Yeah. And there's another. So
This
it's
is the
kind of
same stones. There's something over here.
there was probably a case of another WebP there, but there you have some. So this where you see there are some decorations and graves, but the thing is here that here in the Bronze Age you start going back to burial mounds, because when you have the battle axe culture come in, you stop using these megalithic communal graves, and you go into a single grave system with a personal single sacrifice per grave. Before they were more of a communal thing, and the megalithic idea of and barrows goes away.
Right.
But during the Bronze Age, you come into, if you can go into the folder called Bronze Age graves.
Bronze Age graves. Yep. Which one
Yeah.
would you like to?
Take the one called Spear Mountain.
Yep. Just a moment.
During the Bronze Age, you have this revival of building stone structures for burial. So this is a cairn, which are a large rock pile, essentially, of smaller rocks. There are some of various shapes and forms, but these are one of the time that this becomes popular in certain parts of Scandinavia, where there's a lot of rocks around, obviously. And if you go take the next one, you can see the burial mounds. The burial mounds are probably the most popular ones in Scandinavia. Some of these are composites, that they are a stone cairn that has essentially been buried. But the most common thing is that it's just a mount. And you will find these all across Scandinavia. And in modern Scandinavia, we'll also find, as most of you know, a church very close to these ones, because during later in the Iron Age, there is a period in the Bronze Age where where it goes into the Iron Age, where you stop making burial mounds, and then during the Vendel period, it becomes popular again. This is probably due to various changes in climate and availability of food. There simply isn't enough. There simply isn't enough food to put time and effort into making large burial mounds. You just dig people down, keep it simple. And then you have the third type, which are much rarer, but it's kind of a mixed one where you can see the earlier burial Stone Age burial mount style with a.
It's very similar.
Yeah, it's more like a room. So it's like you have large stones forming a central room, and then you build a cairn around it. So you have like this, the Stone Age chamber inside it. And this is the one that we saw the rock art from previously. So those are like standing picture stones that are standing around the central grave inside the mount.
Yes, and I think often these also, correct me if I'm wrong, but it would also be laid out on the ground in the shape of a boat, reflecting the importance of the boats, as we saw in the drawings.
Yes, we call them stone ships.
Yeah.
Should we? What the hell? Let's see. Where did? Yeah, but those aren't really Bronze Age. Those are actually later. Those are come into the Iron. Once the Bronze Age started to transition into the Iron Age. Walrus, can we go into the folder that's just called the Bronze Age again?
Yep. Which image do you want?
Take the one that's called Växöhjälmarna.
Yep. Okay.
With your helmets, and then we'll go from there. Here you can see
these are very cool.
Yeah, these are from Denmark, and these were found as sacrifices in a bog. You might recognize the style from the previous rock art. So these are ritual helmets used in proto-Odinistic rituals. And you can see various spear. There's a various depiction of people participating in a spear dance, wearing these kinds of helmets. And you can see the bird beak on the end of the central ridge.
I was going to ask what the hook here was.
And they also found a statue with that one. If you go back into the list, you will find that it's called BS figurine. There it is. So there you see the figure of some kind of priest wearing that very same type of helmet.
Interesting. So this is you call it a ritual helmet. So this is something the holy men would wear.
Yeah, it's not a defensive piece of armor. It's a strictly religious trapping.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I thought so too. I've always been told that the horns were a meme, so that's the first thing I thought when I saw the helmets. But when you said that they were like ritual helmets, it made a lot more sense.
Yeah. You have since we're into the ritual items, you can take the next picture. Here you can see this is this is a sword type that is found mostly in Denmark and Scandinavia in southern Sweden. I think there was some found in southern Norway as well, but this is an Iberian style sword. from Spain, and you can actually
there was this
find,
thing.
yeah, there it is. So you can see this is the lower denomination picture there is of a bronze figurine from Anatolia, not Iberia. I'm sorry, it's Turkey.
Mm-hmm.
And you can see it's carrying the same kind of curved sword style that you see here. This is the one of the ones found in Denmark. And by his
So would this
side,
be something that had been traded up, or has there been some cultural exchange?
this is probably a finished product that has been making its way up with the trade network.
Yeah.
Because they're kind of rare. The Mycenaean style leaf blade is much more common.
Mm-hmm.
And you can also see there the petroglyph that has been found that is theorized to have been having one of those rarer curved swords.
Right.
You can look in. You can take the next one there. We can see a more common style of swords.
Is it
So
this
these
one?
are. Yeah, you can see the handle there. These are. You can see here is a single. There you can see it better.
Yeah.
Because there is nothing else on it. So you can see how the blade is shaped. Because this is this is the most simple design. It's a slightly leaf shaped short blade. The hilt has that's a different. Keep that on.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. And you can see the holes there, where it's like a modern kitchen knife, where you are using pegs to hold wood for the handle, and usually bone or polished ivory for the pommel and crossguard. And you can see the sword grip doesn't go all the way out on the tang on that model.
So
This one does.
So this one, yeah, or
Yeah, the other one
it doesn't go all the way. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
It doesn't go all the way out. So this is also the basic. If you go back to the previous sword that you showed that had a full bronze hilt. No, the other one. That one here. You can see this one is a much more, say, expensive premium version that has a full hilt and pommel and grip all in bronze.
Guard, yeah.
But you can still see the pins there. So you see that this isn't a solid piece. The blade continues, and then the tang goes through the hilt, the single cast hilt, out into the pommel. You can see the pin that comes out there in the end.
Yep.
So it goes all the way through, and then the bronze handle, so to speak, is a single piece that is pinned to the blade and tang.
It's a cool design.
Yeah, you will find this this kind of pommel design all across. This kind of pommel design then moves into doubles. In the British Isles, you will often see it it moves into a double spiral, and that design kind of lives on for a very long time in Ireland, for example, well into the Iron Age.
Now, there was a picture of some axes here.
Yes.
They look very much like the axes we saw on the... Here we go. On the drawings.
You still retain the striking side here. You have... but these are also probably ritual or high-class weapons. During the Bronze Age, you have these they're called holkix or butthole axes. That essentially it's just the blade forming into a hole where you can put like an L-shape stick into. So you just have like the outer edge, the cutting edge.
Okay.
So those are more for they are essentially very sparsely using in material. To keep the price down, of course, so it's more of a regular, everyday use kind of thing. Where these which are fully cast and tooled, as you can see, with spiral patterns. These are high status weapons.
There's also some figurines.
Yes, these are various figurines. You can see here there's snakes,
Mhm.
moose, and some kind of guy. So you can see there's
I mean, this design here of the moose really reminds me of what would later become sort of the more dragon-like aesthetic of a lot of the Norwegian Viking
yeah,
age,
especially
whatever, really.
what becomes the Urnes style.
Yeah.
With
They were moose all along.
well, probably not, but you know. Let's see here. We can take away that one. We can take away that
There's a
one.
chariot.
Yeah, that's
That's cool.
the Trundholm chariot. It is found in also found in a bog in Denmark. So it's a solid bronze design with a gilded, or rather, I should say, gold plate solar disc that is inscribed with various designs, and quite obviously a religious object of the Bronze Age solar cults.
Okay. Huh. Very cool.
So
I'm really enjoying this. This is, it's one of those things that you never really, or I never really got to dive into. This is very cool. Do you want to go to the next part? Or do you have more Bronze Age?
no, I think we can jump forward to the Vendel era, or the early Iron Age.
Okay. Any specific image you want to start with?
You can start with opening the one that called Iron Age Graves. Since we touched on the topic, we can return to it.
Sure.
And here you can find, here you can see Ale Stenar, Gotland. This is one of those stone ships that you call it, and these are from the early Iron Age. And these are both burial site and cult site, so ritual site, so to speak. So they form and then you also have here the thing that certain barrels are inside the ship, but you also come back to that thing that there are burials around it.
It's the circle thing.
Yeah, or that you have a mound field, a field of burial mounds nearby. So,
right.
But usually
Not
you don't.
Everyone gets to be on the ship.
Yeah, usually that's a single family or a single person who are buried in the ships. So usually a local jarl or something like that, or an important spiritual priest of some of the cults.
Yep.
So essentially, a powerful and important person, and that becomes essentially a central cult site as well. So it's because of all the work that is involved in it and the spiritual significance. This is not something you do for anyone, but I think there are many thousands of these kind of stone ships in Sweden alone. They come in various designs.
Yeah, these could be, of course, started to be found all over the Baltic at this point, and basically one of the ways in which you can, on the East Baltic coast, you can distinct because the Finno-Ugrics are invading, and you can make out the difference between the Germanic and the Finno-Ugric by this boat design versus a more rectangular garden sort of design of grave.
Yeah, and then you have this next picture where you can see there's a double stone ship, so to speak. You can see
this one.
Yeah. So you have like two boats. One is they're probably not designed together, but one is later than the other. So someone thought it might be to make a row of stone ships. And then you have the last one there.
One.
Yeah, it's from another one. Here you can see this is not in a coastal area. You can see there isn't so much dirt here, so they have created like a stone foundation to hold the upright stones, and it's kind of smaller because it can't stand the weight. And so this is more in these smaller ones with these surrounding stone fields are more common inland near lakes and lake systems and the like, and the bigger ones are closer to usually to the coasts. Mm-hmm. This is also probably an artifact of population density.
I was going to say it would probably be more likely that they congregated along the coast.
Mm.
Nice. I see a lot of cool pictures in the Vendel folder.
Yeah, we can go into that one now. This is, what did I say? It appeals to the male fantasy.
It does. I'm ready. I mean, look at this. This is a reconstruction. This is probably better.
Yeah, this is one of the. I think this is from grave. This is from grave 5. No. Here you can see they're similar. These are from the burial mounds at Vendel. And these are iron and copper. No, iron and the bronze helmets. If you take the left one to the left, there you can see these are coming in a variety of styles. You can see the left one here. It's not solid, so it's like a rib lattice of iron that goes around, and then they have these stanced bronze plates that goes around the rim and around the crown here. These are called pressbleck. So essentially you have a harder iron original copy, and then you press hammer the thin bronze plate over it. So it's it's not a it's essentially so it's, and then you put it upon the basic iron helmet design. So it's a decorational plates in bronze. Essentially, they're not for armoring. It's just pure decoration. Here you can see another one, and you can see the middle section there. You have these gilded bronze plates around it, and then you have this section with holes in.
Yep.
This is actually like a rib structure, but since it's iron and it has rusted, it has the rust have grown.
Okay.
So it's essentially a cross lattice of iron ribs.
Huh.
If you go to the reconstruction there, the furthest one there you can see how the one with the rib lattices in kind of this is a reconstruction of how it would have looked when it was new.
That's one of the things that I hate about sort of modern depictions of older stuff, is that there's no color.
Yeah,
when you look at like movies of like these kinds of things, but like in reality, I think there was a lot more color than.
Yeah, but you can see that it's the liberal frame of history. Everything was dry and cold, and there was no color. It was bad. Just to take a tangent, have you guys seen the Last Duel?
The Last Duel.
Yeah, the latest movie. It's kind of good, but it's all cold and is like a blue tint lens to make like it's cold, and everyone is just going around in drab gray brownish anything, and it's high medieval era. It would have been so colorful you thought that you've been the fucking 19th.
I mean, the costuming, I'm just looking at pictures from it here. I mean, the costuming here has a lot of color, but the filter on it sort of washes all of that out.
Yeah, because it has to be gray and drab so people understand that it's bad and everybody was cold all the time, even though during the high medieval era it was a lot warmer than it was now.
Yeah.
Do you recommend the movie?
It's kind of, I would say it's good, but I think it's a frame thing. You have been bombarded with so much shit these last couple of 10 years. So something that
mildly competent becomes great.
Yes.
I understand what you're saying.
it's competent cinematography, and well, it's good. Go look at it. Northman is a lot better though.
Yeah.
Well, even the Northman has this problem with
Yeah,
the drab clothing and people dirty all the time, and
yeah, they couldn't really escape that frame. It was one of my nitpicks.
yeah. Just to say, when the drab, gray, and monotone, mainly black clothing comes in from the industrial age, when everything was made by started getting mass produced, and of course you make it in one color, so that's when the monocolor comes in.
Hmm. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. Anyway, if you go back a little bit, you should look at go back to the third picture. No, not that one. One more there.
Okay. Third from the right.
On the right one, you can see here the central ridge here that is ends in a boar head, and then you have the distinctly Uranus style looking dragon heads on the side of the brow. The middle of the rim here is a chasmite style lattice of gold and garnets. So these are kind of red-ish.
Ah, okay. Cool. Yeah, I can see a hint of it. Like, you can see a bit of red if you zoom in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you here's the problem I see now. A lot of the swords are web piece.
Ah, well, I can try to open them in.
Well, this one we can see here. This is essentially from from Valsgärde in Vendel. This is from the 600s. And these are from boat graves. So these are men who were buried in ships.
Sorry, do you want it back?
Yeah, you can take it back.
That's some blue glass there.
Yeah, blue. There you see it again, blue glass. But if you look into zoom in on the sword hilts there, you can see it's the same chasmite lattice work that is on with garnets and gold.
The middle one?
Not the swords.
Yeah, sorry.
You can see in the hilt this grid-like design.
I think you had that in a WebP, or did you want to?
You can see it's more on the WebP ones, but you can see it here as well. People who have seen the Sutton Hoo hoard will, from the Anglo-Saxons, will also remember that there's a lot of styles with that where you have these inlaid garnets in gold in geometric shapes.
Very cool.
So, it comes around. If you could take one of the Vallstena Gotland, that sword, and open it in the WebP, because I think that one has the clearest image.
Oh wow, that was very cool.
It's very well preserved.
What is this outcropping on the top here?
They don't know. It's a decorative kind of bulge for some reason.
Huh.
I don't know. It's just made that way. But here,
I mean,
you can really
sort of having this like see-through hilt here. Is this glass?
I don't know. I think so. But you can see here on the hilt the gold and the garnet inlays in this kind of flowing shapes.
Yeah.
So
I think the handle there, there's nothing original in the red part in the handle there. The sword tang would have gone through, and then they would have had wood and leather or something for the handle.
Ah, okay.
So that's just something holding the
Yeah, it's a thing. Just
pommel and hilt together in a formation where they would have been on the handle. That
So this
no
is just
longer-
from the okay, from the
and
reconstruction.
It's something that holds it up.
Yeah.
And you can see the voids in the hilt and the pommel there is because this would have been inlaid bone. Like it's a checker marked bone plate to give it that pretty white color to go with the gold, with the gilt bronze. But that one has of course rotted away together with the iron blade. So only the bronze and gold and garnets of the hilt
remain. Yeah.
survive.
Just gonna go to the next one here because this was
Here we have one more that is
Interesting.
more of a ceremonial sword that has as you can see here, a full metal grip with garnets and gilt bronze. And this one is kind of interesting because you see that the leather sheath has actually survived being in a very dry environment in the mound.
This is probably the same one from a different angle.
Yeah, you can see the garnet inlays better on that one.
I mean, we hadn't talked a lot about culture stuff in the Iron Age stuff, but I mean, it seems like the craftsmanship and ritual part of it sort of just exploded here.
Yeah, we will look into more into that during the next the Viking stream, I think, because then we will look into how the art styles comes from out of the early Iron Age into and really blossoms into the Viking Age with the different styles. So I thought because then we can really nerd ourselves down into the nitty-gritties of that one.
Yeah, just to drive a point about this culture and maybe to lay some foundations on the cosmology. I didn't know that much about this blue glass and its significance, but it really connects to this idea of the two seas that were parted to create Earth, or Midgard, and the other sea being the flooded Earth with no land, and the first sea being, of course, the sky, the blue sky. And these two seas had to be ripped apart in, a parting of the seas way into a place where then Midgard or the Earth could be born. In the Finnic religion, it would have been born of an iron egg, and in Norse, it would have been, of course, the bodies of Jotun that Odin slays.
Yep.
But regardless, in all of these different the sky and the sea are parted so that human life can become in between, and this blue glass that reflects the heavens is very significant, I feel, to this. I didn't know about that part so much before.
Yeah, because the thing is, as I said previously, the thing here isn't the Egyptians weren't the only one who could make blue glass, but they were the only one who could make clear blue glass. Everyone else, had it's almost like when they could try to make colored glass, it became like almost like a ceramic, opaque, and you couldn't have that see-through quality. Only the Egyptians could do that during the Bronze Age.
What was their secret?
The secret is that they could do that even during the rest of during the Stone Age. I mean, it's old technology that they had. This, and also they had an ample supply of lapis lazuli because you need the cobalt in it to make properly. And if you just Yeah, and if you only put, like powdered cobalt into your glass mass, it will turn opaque. You have to refine the cobalt out of the lapis lazuli to make
Right.
to make it clean. Otherwise, all the slag products and the other one will blur the glass.
That all makes sense, but I think I'm going to go with aliens.
Yeah. Insert alien man meme here.
Yeah.
The Hancock DMT explanation for blue glass.
Hmm.
Let's see.
So
But blue at that time, I guess blue has been associated with royalty for a very long time, assuming
Yeah.
it's because of the scarcity. But was it the same way at that time that it was sort of okay? They just associated that blue would be kind of a royal type.
No, during the late Bronze Age, you start to be able to get various pigmentations from plants to make this this kind of corn blue cloth that you see if you look at drawings and stuff like that from both the late Bronze Age and Viking. But that's also, it's very prevalent up in northern Europe as well. It's usually blue or green that people use for their clothes, or pure white linen then, of course, but that usually gets dirty very quickly. So you have this kind of storm blue color is kind of usual because it's easy to produce from plants, and it was very popular. I'm not sure on the cultural side of the popularity of the color, but that's
I'm
about
just speculating, but that's quite interesting.
it.
here's someone sent me this. Is this Oh, okay, never mind. This might be relevant next time. Do you have anything you want to add, Leo? Any? We have maybe 20 minutes to go.
We said that we were going to read a bit about Tacitus Germania.
Oh yeah, sure. Yeah.
To see what the Romans thought about the Scandinavians. Let's see, where did I put that book? So this one is written in the 1st century AD.
Let's see if we come out any better than the Brits did, the bog people.
Yeah, it was, let's see here, where are we? Chapter 40, there we are. Quote, beyond these tribes, the state of Sionis, not on, but in the ocean, possess not merely arms and men, but powerful fleets. The style of their ships differs in this respect, that there is a prow at each end, with a beak ready to be driven forwards. They neither work it with sails, nor add oars in banks on the side. The gearing of the oars is detached, as on certain rivers, and is reversible, as occasion demands, for movement in either direction, both back and forth. Among these peoples, further, respect is paid to wealth, and one man is accordingly supreme, with no restrictions and with an unchallenged right to obedience. Nor is there any general carrying of arms here, as among the other Germans. Rather, they are locked up in charge of a warder, and that warder is a slave. The ocean forbids sudden inroads from enemies, and besides, bands of armed men with nothing to do easily becomes riotous. It is not to the king's interest to put a noble or a freeman or even a freedman in charge of the arms. Beyond the Sionis is another sea, sluggish and almost motionless, with which the earth is girdled and bounded. Evidence for this is furnished in the brilliance of the last rays of the sun, which remain so bright from its setting as to the rising again, as to dim the stars. Faith adds further to that the sound of this emergence is audible, and the forms of his horses visible, with spikes in his crown. This is probably, end quote, this is an interpretation of the aurora borealis. As something that is galloping across the sky. Then you have the sun chariot, of course, because the Romans are still pagan. Mostly at this time, the Christianity hasn't really set in. So the idea of Apollo, or rather his Roman guys with the sun chariot and the aurora borealis, the spikes in his crown.
Yeah. I found the detail about the weapons quite interesting, that they were like no one's carrying weapons on the regular, which would make sense if you're living somewhere where you're not really getting attacked, I suppose. But I think that's something that carried over into later stuff. We might talk about that later as well. I mean, they're still in at least here in Norway, in older buildings, and even in some of the more modern ish buildings, dedicated weapons rooms, etc. for storing away your arms. Yeah.
Well, we are a hot-headed and fractious bunch when allowed to be ourselves. So better if we weren't armed, because then we just kill each other.
Yeah.
He also, well, in any case, let's say, take the next page here. He goes on to talk a little about some other things. Quote, "So far, and here rumor speaks the truth, and so far only does nature reach. Accordingly, we must now turn to the right-hand shore of the Suebic Sea." End quote. This is probably then the Baltic. Quote, "Here it washes the tribes of the Aesti. Their customs and dress are Suebic, but their language is nearer British. They worship the mother of the gods. An emblem of that superstition, they wear the figures of wild boars. This boar takes the place of arms or any other protection, and guarantees the devotee of the goddess a mind at rest even in the midst of foes. They use swords rarely, clubs frequently. Grain and other products of the earth they cultivate with a patience out of keeping with the lethargy customary to Germans. They ransack the sea also, and are the only people who gather in the shallows, and on the shore itself the amber, which they call their tongue gleisum. Nor have they, being barbarians, inquired or learned that the substance of the being barbarians, inquired or learned what the substance or process produces it. Nay, it lay there among the rest of the flotsam and jetsam of the sea, until Roman luxury gave it a name. So the name, it is useless. It is gathered crude. It is forwarded to Rome unshaped and lusterless. They are astonished to be paid for it. Yet you may infer that it is the excavations of trees. Certain creeping and even winged creatures are continually found therein embedded. They have been entangled in its liquid form, and, as the material hardens, are imprisoned. I should suppose therefore that, just as the secluded places of the East, where frankincense and balsam are excluded, so in the islands and lands to the west there are groves and glades more than ordinary luxuriance. These are tapped and liquefied by the rays of the sun as it approaches, and ooze into the nearest sea, whence the force of the tempest they are stranded on the shores opposite. If you
What did you say the name of the tribe was? Aesti?
Aesti.
That sounds exactly like what the modern Estonians call themselves, Aesti.
Yeah, and here Tacitus then presumes that it is on the Scandinavian peninsula you can find these luxurious groves of amber trees that when the setting sun reaches closest to the horizon, the sap melts from them and runs into the sea, and then are washed up on the shore of the eastern Baltic.
Yeah,
which is kind of interesting.
Yeah.
Imagine
being this Estonian peasant guy.
Well, at this time,
Who's-
it was early Roman, so I would say this would be Proto-Finnic as
Okay.
well. So it would be all Baltic Finnics, basically, because the Finnish explosion and expansion is yet to come.
But according to this Roman guy, you're just sitting there waiting for your crops to grow, and then the Romans come along and want to pay you for the rocks that wash up on the shore.
Yeah, the brown and orange rocks.
Labor theory of value, BTFO.
Yeah, I can read the last piece here also because it's almost over. Adjacent to the Sionis come the tribes of the Sitones, resembling them in all other respects and differing only in this, that among them the women rules. This extent they have fallen lower, not merely than freemen, but even that of slaves.
Oh, wow.
This sounds like a tribe that was removed by others.
Yeah, they are adjacent, so they are not. They are probably one of the Baltic tribes adjacent to this one. So I don't know, Estonia.
Might,
Well,
might
southern
be Letgalians or something.
Lithuania down there somewhere. But well, he has a very stoic Roman idea of of women having a say here. Essentially, what is it? To the extent, I mean, what the fuck?
Well, he didn't mention that especially for any of the others, so.
So now that doesn't happen. I mean, in the Scandinavian
This is the
context.
Scandinavian proto-feminism I've heard so much about.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that isn't isn't even mentioned with the Scandinavians.
And here we come into here it comes back into the various nearby German tribes, bad mouthing them, of course. Here Swabia ends. As for the tribe of the Persini, Vaeldi, and Feni, I am in doubt whether to count them as Germans or Sarmatians. Though the Pecurni, some men call the Baristani, in language, culture, fixity of habitation, and house building, conduct themselves as Germans. They are all dirty and lethargic. The faces of the chiefs, too, owing to the intermarriage, were to some extent the degraded aspect of the Sarmatians, while the Venedi have contracted mainly of the Sarmatian habits. They are Catarians, infesting all the hills and the forests which lie between the Pecuni and the Feni. And yet these people are preferably entered as Germans, since they have fixed abodes and carry shields, and delight to use their feet and to run fast, all which are traits as opposite to those of the Sarmatians, who live in wagons and on horseback. The Feni live in astonishing barbarism and disgusting misery. No arms, no horses, no fixed homes, herbs for their food, skins for their clothing, earth for their bed. Arrows are all their wealth. For want of iron, they tip them with bone. This same hunting is then supported. The same hunting is the support of the women as well of the men, for they accompany the men freely and claim a share of the spoil, nor have their infants any shelter against wild beasts and rain, except for the covering afforded by a few intertwined branches. To these the hunters return. There are the asylum of age, and yet they think it happier than to groan over field labor, be cumbered with house service, and be forever exchanging their own and their neighbors' goods with alternate hopes and fears. Unconcerned towards men, unconcerned towards heaven, they have achieved a consummation very difficult. They have nothing even to ask for.
This is clearly the Sami.
I mean,
With
are
the
you
name Feni,
with the eternal happy hunter-gatherer, or are you with the angry Roman man here?
The angry Roman man seems very based, so I'm probably on more.
He does. At the same time, if you could just be like a happy, carefree Estonian man rolling around in the mud, That was a very good account. As Nordanon wrote a couple of minutes ago, I love the casual Roman racism and xenophobia.
Well, I think that casual racism and xenophobia was practiced by everyone.
Yeah, probably.
Just needed the Roman to articulate it.
Yeah, they wrote it down. That's the difference. Yeah. Anyway, we're coming up on almost 3 hours at this point. Leo, Berkarl, do you have anything you want to add before we end the stream here?
No, I think we're good for now, and then we'll take a short break and come back in a couple of weeks with the Viking Age.
Yes, I think the stream has certainly laid the groundwork and painted a very interesting picture of the pre-Viking Age culture in a way that I wasn't very aware of before. But it's a lot deeper than what the modern mind, I suppose, would think.
Yeah. And now you have also learned about the astonishing barbarism and disgusting misery and horseless living of the Fenni.
Yeah, yes. Berkarl, do you have anything you want to add on the Fenni? Or,
There have been, of course,
here?
the speculations of the Fenni being the Finns, but honestly, the Aesti and knowing the actual DNA evidence of the Proto-Finnics being, one group at this point, not split out into, Karelians and Finns and such at this point. So I would speculate that the Fenni here were Sami.
Yeah, probably, because at this point the Finnish people in southern Finland is well into the Iron Age and are more or less indistinguishable from the rest of the Scandis.
Yeah. I mean, we often say that Finns are these Mongols from the east, but even in the over 4,000 years ago, the Finnic tribes in the tributaries to the Volga on the Kama and Oka rivers in the far east near the Urals, even over there was already admixture going on with the Indo-Europeans, and by the point where Finnics are crashing into Germanics on the Baltic Sea, it's already over 90% Indo-European. Just the language remains, basically, and it's very similar. I would just like to end with a common ritual from I guess you could call it the late Neolithic, but early Bronze Age as well. And there are also records of this ritual surviving all the way to almost pre-industrial times, when the 1600s, 1700s, in very, very remote areas. There would be this metaphor of the primordial hero rising from the sea, becoming conscious for the first time, having just floated around aimlessly before. And this is the metaphor of the young man becoming for the first time conscious of his actions and his impact on the world. I think a lot of us can feel this, and this ritual is carried out through leading the female relatives of the young man, leading him to a rock or cliff face with a hole through it. There is a red rope of some sort tied around the young man or the young boy, and he is pulled through a hole in the rock or cliff or something like that by the male relatives. And after it, he becomes his father's son instead of a boy at the hem of his mother's skirts.
Oh, that's very interesting. Yeah, that's very cool.
And this is a sort of initiation ritual into the tribe that has been found among all over the Scandinavian, Baltic, I guess more of the East Scandinavian, where these rock formations of holes of them are common. But it has been, this tradition has spread all over, and there are examples of it. I think it's on the British Isles as well, for example.
Yeah, it exists in the British Isles. Probably
Yes.
the Danes and Norwegians who, or probably even the Jutes even before the Viking invasions, brought this with them. You can also find it in
But the
in Norman.
origins are already in the Neolithic, with these rock formations that young men are put through, and this idea of becoming conscious for the first time really resonated with me, because I started thinking about the moment I would think of when I started, not being floating around in the sea aimlessly and actually started taking conscious action in my life. And running into this primordial hero story rising from the sea really, really resonated with me as regards the ancient cultures of these peoples.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I really like the description of that ritual as well. I mean, it's almost overt, I suppose, in its intention, but it's I think it's something that I have been thinking about myself. It's the, if you're going to take on the role as a father, at what point do you tell your kid to to grow up, basically, to come with you, instead of the mother. Anyway, I think on that note, we should look to end the stream. Do you guys have anything you would like to share about your various socials, anything like that?
No, nothing.
For Carl, anything?
Physique Friday on Gab, last Friday every month.
Okay. Luddic, any memes coming up?
Yeah, actually, the memes are going to stay on schedule. So, but I'm not here to shill them. I just ask people to, I guess, hit the like button and keep following us. And
yeah,
I mean, next week we're doing the 2000s culture episode, so I'm looking forward to that. I think that's going to be a fun one.
Yeah, we've been talking a bit about it in our private chat, you and I found that the more we talk about it, the more I find myself being enraged by it. So that's a good sign usually.
We can get some passion out of it. So we go. I mean, I mentioned it on the previous stream as well, but we're going to look at some of these more coarse video games that started coming out in the early 2000s, like the Postal 2s, Manhunts. Like the early GTAs and some of the implications of like video game censorship, and looking at some of these shittier TV shows, and probably ending off with the with some more Sacha Baron Cohen stuff. Actually, I think he is quite a sort of interesting subversive character, and he's not been covered a lot in right-wing media as far as I've seen. So
I think I've landed on
take a dig in at him.
Yeah, and I think I've landed on it's almost like a takedown of the culture that created sort of the programmed version of me back in like 2012, right? Before I started caring about anything, before I grew up, as you said, Burkarl.
Yes.
And that's why I feel like it's important to recognize that actually, you know what, the media I consumed in the mid-2000s actually had an adverse effect on me.
I think it had that on all of us, really. And I mean, it's much about the power of programming and the sort of how you appeal to a younger mind using this kind of ridicule I think Sacha Baron Cohen is probably better at that than any other entertainer. I mean, of course, you have all these shitty late night comedy shows, like the Colberts and all these other ones that are try to be a little bit more intellectual. But with these Sacha Baron Cohen characters, he's very well able to establish a kind of narrative that if you're conservative in any way, you're basically kind of a retard. And if you're able to kind of repeat that and hammer it into the mind of a young person, then there's just going to be a sort of wall there of resistance to exploring these more conservative ideas. But I don't want to spoil too much on it. Just want to say thanks to Leo Borealis for a great stream. Usually with history, I'm sort of worried that it's going to be a little bit too dry, but this was actually very fun and interesting. So many thanks.
Yeah, thank you. No, I try, as I said to Bear Call before we started, I'm trying to keep it into conversational and to the more interesting topics. I mean, I'm not a history teacher or anything, so I'm not a lecturer. I'm an engineer. So
you just do this as a hobby, because I assume that you might have an academic background of some sorts in history.
Yeah, no, it's more of a hobby.
Interesting.
It was very, very well presented, I think. I learned a lot, and if I can have like a boomer truth shattering moment, I think I'll call it a success.
That's always nice to hear. Thank you, gentlemen.
Okay, and on that note, I think we'll wish everyone else a good night or a good day, depending on when you're listening to this, and hope to see you next time on the Longhouse. Bye-bye.